Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to episode number 103 of Let's Go Racing with David Starr. Tyler Jones here with you. So glad to have you with us. Coming up on today's show, we are going to be joined by Dale Tanhardt, known as the undisputed greatest NASCAR better in the universe in his Twitter bio. Also the co-host of the Garage Guys podcast covering NASCAR and the betting side of the NASCAR world. We'll talk to Dale and look ahead to this weekend at Vegas. Not a better time to talk to Dale when he joins us coming up in just a few moments from right now. We'll look forward to chatting with him about that and get to our news and notes segment, our Ask David segment as well, coming up at the end of the show. David Starr is back with us here this week. David, how we doing? How was your week there at Fontana?
Man, it was a cool weekend, with the weather. The weather was interesting. It rained a lot. Man, I've never seen it rain so much in Southern California. But it was amazing, the amount of rain and just all the news coverage and all the there was a lot of highways that were being shut down in the LA area for landslides and flooding and a lot of the Californian people that I was visiting with, they said, man, this is uncharacteristics of our state. We don't get this kind of rain. And not only did it rain a lot for days and days, the day of the race, it rained that morning and it sleeted. There was ice coming out of the sky hitting the windshield. It was like, wow, I can't believe it's sleeting here. And then next thing you know, it was Winter Wonderland, man. It was absolutely gorgeous to how big the snowflakes were. And then hours later, the sun came out and cleared up for about 30 minutes. It was unbelievable. But man, the beauty of it, we didn't get to run the race, but it would have been a great story to have it wake up Saturday morning. It's flooding, there's rain, and next thing you know, it's sleeting. And then next thing you know, it's snowing. It was unbelievable. And 2 hours later, you're running a NASCAR race. That would have been really a cool storyline. It unfortunately didn't work out that way. But man, what a cool, it turned out to be a great day on Sunday with a lot of racing. But man, what a beautiful background. I don't know if y'all saw it on television, but man, the mountains and all the snow is just, it's almost like a picture. You're there, you're looking at the back straightaway and all the beautiful mountains back there. Is amazing, but what a cool weekend it was.
Yeah, for sure. Dominic Hodogun from the RacingExperts.com joins us here as well. Dom, Kyle Busch getting back in victory lane, just his second race with RCR. That didn't take long.
Yeah, that didn't take long at all. And Kyle Busch, let's be honest, did we really think it would take him this long to get back to victory lane or this quickly with Richard Childress Racing running so well? Look, cream of the crop at Daytona, ran well at LA, and then now in Fontana, 3 different kind of racetracks, and we've seen that 8 car up front at all of them. So Kyle Busch running up front, it doesn't matter that he's with Richard Childress Racing, and it took him 2 whole races to get that first win. But Kyle Busch now sole possession with 61 career wins, ahead of Kevin Harvick on the wins list.
And he and his brother now are the all-time winningest brother duo in the history of the sport, he and Kurt. So pretty nice accomplishment there. And David, the fact that they gelled this quickly, got to victory lane that quick, watch out. We could be talking about Kyle Busch being the champion here when it's all said and done. The fact that they got this thing going as fast as they did.
Oh, yeah, there was no doubt, if anybody had any doubt, they don't know too much about what's going on in the sport, but you look at what Tyler Reddick did last year in the RCR cars. You look at Austin Dillon. Tyler Reddick was really he was the leader of the pack for that organization last year. And man, they were strong pretty much all year long. I can't remember how many wins they had, but when we heard of the news, when everybody learned that Kyle Busch would be joining Richard Childress Racing, man, I just said, man, you knew that combination right there was going to be incredible. And when you married those 2 recipes, RCR organization and their organization with the technology and the research and the engineering and their engines and you look at how they've ran the last couple of years, and you plug in Kyle Busch, man, all you can think of is wins and championships there, and I'm not surprised at all, and man, they didn't take him when the race started. You just saw him working on the car a little bit here, a little bit there, and it was amazing. Ross Chastain had the dominant car first half or maybe 3/4 of the race, but man, once Kyle Busch when his crew chief and the team made some small adjustments, it was amazing how good he was. I don't think any of us are surprised by that, and it's momentum, and you look back on. Kind of how the things played out the last couple of years. You kind of knew that Kyle Busch was going to have kind of a chip on his shoulder. He wanted to prove to everybody. And look, organizations. You're on top for 4 or 5 years, and it's just kind of the cycle of our racing business. You're on top. The next thing you know, you have a challenging year. There's a lot of cycles in this, and
Sure.
I think last year and the year before that Gibbs had a little bit of a cycle, and kind of like a little bit of a downturn. Not much, but a little bit. We didn't see him as dominant as we've seen him in years past. But man, Kyle Busch, the opportunity and that marriage with RCR, guys. I mean, if you don't say championship caliber organization, to me, he's one of the top 3 at the end of the year, already, and we're only 2 races into the season.
Oh, yeah. We'll have more on Kyle Busch and get to our headlines coming up later on. But please do welcome into the show Dale Tanhardt, from the Garage Guys podcast. If you're walking around the track, it's hard to miss this guy with the shades and usually the old racing jacket going on, and he joins us on the program right now. Dale, glad to have you here. Thanks for joining us from the Dale Center, right?
Yeah, this is where all the magic happens, right? All the betting information, good or bad. We get a little bit of both over here, but no, thank you guys for having me on. I'm happy to be here, and there's a lot to talk about. It's been a fun weekend at Fontana, excluding the rain, kind of as David was talking about, and another fun week coming up with Las Vegas. So, excited.
And speaking of Vegas, I thought this was the perfect time to have you on with your expertise on the betting side. This being such a big week, with that in mind, coming to Vegas and everything, and we were trying to explain to David who you are, and before we were bringing you on and everything, and I said, no, this guy is perfect to have on this week because the growth of this sport, Dale. I'm sure you feel the same way. I think it's largely contingent on sports betting and seeing sports betting increase around the country. That only helps out NASCAR here.
Absolutely. And it's a very simple concept. I think, you don't have to be a hardcore fan, and you can be a hardcore fan. The bottom line is that having a little bit of skin in the game always makes it a little bit more fun. In this case, a little bit of skin in the race, right? And as sportsbooks continue to diversify their products and have more offerings, I think it's been kind of a rocky start to 2023, which is another different discussion. But as long as we continue to diversify our products and offer more to the casual fan that wants to get involved in racing and in a fun way that is sports betting, we're going to see a lot more growth, and we're going to see an explosion, I think, in the motorsports industry in the next year or so.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. Dale, tell us about your background. How did you get to where you're at now, man?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So first things first, I just have been a lifelong NASCAR fan. I mean, since I was crawling on carpet, as my parents like to say. My dad would be watching, and I would be on the carpet looking up at the TV and setting up my toy cars, like how they were going on the track, like trying to guess restarts with my like little die-cast cars. So I've been watching like as close to birth as possible. And my dad was a huge Dale Earnhardt fan, and the Earnhardt fandom certainly carried over to me as a huge Dale Earnhardt Jr. fan. And I also loved Jeff Gordon, which my dad in the early stages was like, of course, right? Like I love Dale Sr. and my son, my only son, I'm one of three kids, and I'm the only one that liked NASCAR. My dad tried to get all my brothers on it, but of course, my one son that loves NASCAR has to love Jeff Gordon, right? And it's funny because he came back around and ended up loving Gordon later on. But lifelong NASCAR fan, and really never knew. Always wanted to be a part of the sport somehow. Like Mike Joy was always my idol. Like as a kid, like not just being a big NASCAR fan, but being a big sports fan. I really, really appreciated the broadcasts, right? Like I loved the Fox broadcast growing up with Mike Joy. I never actually wanted to be a race car driver as much as I wanted to be a broadcaster because of Mike Joy. And going through all that and the fandom, living all through high school, all through college, I got a college degree, a business administration degree from Mississippi State University with a concentration in accounting. Got a job out of college as an auditor / trainer for a tire company, and I loved that. But I always wanted to try to find a way to work in NASCAR. I used to send in internships to the sanctioning body, to all sorts of different racetracks, never got any kind of bites. And that was just to do something on the business side of it. And I always thought I had a good resume. Never worked out, so kind of put it on the wayside. And around 2019, 2020, I kind of wasn't feeling as passionate about the job I was working, even though it was a great job. I wanted to try to find a way back into NASCAR, and I went to the Beau Rivage down here in Biloxi, Mississippi when the sports book opened, and I made my first ever sports bet on Kevin Harvick to win at Michigan. I don't remember if it was Michigan 1 or Michigan 2, but I remember looking at the sheet, and he was 6-1. And Kevin Harvick, if you guys remember, was amazing during that 2019, 2020 era. I mean, even 2018, but when we had the high downforce package, Kevin Harvick and Denny Hamlin were just unbelievable for that 2-year period.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe that line. So I bet on it, and I won my first ever legal sports bet. And it kind of carried on where I was enjoying betting and winning money. And I was like, you know what, maybe there's something I could do with this. And I wanted to try to be more different than a lot of different writers and sports betting experts that weren't really focused on NASCAR. They were focused on football or basketball, but would have NASCAR on the side just to kind of fill that void. Sure. I wanted to be 100% NASCAR, 100% motorsports, and do it through the most creative way possible, which was just original video content. And I was doing that on the side while I was still working at my job. And when COVID hit, it changed everything. It really made me put a lot more time into it because I was at home all the time. I was working remotely for 3 months, but early 2020 when the COVID pandemic happened. And that changed everything. And basically some videos started taking off on Twitter, and picks were going pretty good, which it was a lot easier to predict around the time of COVID, after COVID, because no qualifying.
Kevin Harvick, right? Or Denny Hamlin, yeah.
Yeah, and even 2021, like once you figured out who was unloading fast every single week, that's the data you could use for the next comparable racetrack. So in that case, it was primarily Kyle Larson. And you could do the same thing with Xfinity and trucks too. But aside from that, that's basically how it all started. And it's just kind of taken off more and more and more, and just continuously trying to diversify my content outside of betting, but with comedy as well, and some relatable NASCAR videos on TikTok. And of course, I met Garage Guy Chase, and we formed like the perfect partnership, and the Garage Guys NASCAR podcast and everything else we're doing. And it's been an amazing ride, and it has been my full-time job for about 1.5 years now. So always wanted to work in NASCAR, never realized how it could be possible. And this was the avenue. And I think the number one thing, it was fueled by passion. It was fueled by overall passion of the sport.
That's awesome. Well, David, I think about this, with Dale here, we look at the future of the sport and everything, and to see a guy like Dale here who is found his own avenue and this new venture, in the content game and the sports betting side. That's not something you could have ever thought of even a couple of years ago of just how that would be possible here. I know you love hearing stories about when people find that connection to the sport in some way.
Man, I love Dale's story. And thank you, Dale, for sharing that with us. It's interesting. our industry, our NASCAR industry, Dominic and Tyler and myself, we make a living in the sport, but it's just interesting to hear your story. And I think what really, just listening to you, you grow up and your parents and you hear it from everybody. Find something you're passionate about and try to make a living at it. And if you can do that, you never really ever work. You know what I mean? And it's really cool that you're so passionate, and your son's a big Jeff Gordon fan, and your dad loved Dale Earnhardt. I mean, it's like, man, you were kind of raised around it, and that's really cool. But man, it's interesting, just your pathway into the sport, and you've done a great job. And but man, it's just it's got to be fueled by passion, dude, and it's great to hear it. And it's just a life lesson, whether it's NASCAR racing, NFL, Major League Baseball, hockey, or whatever industry it is. Man, it's cool. But the sports betting for me, I think it's amazing to kind of hear your story and actually getting educated about sports betting. And on the NASCAR side, from a driver standpoint, for me, I stay as far away from that as possible. You know what I mean? It's just because that's just, that's the safe way to do. And being it's a little bit of a conflict of interest. So the sports betting, when we talk about NASCAR racing, I've never been involved with any of that. And when people ask me my opinion because they're betting, I just kind of, I shy away from it. And that's the safest thing from a driver standpoint. But, listen to you tell your story and hearing how, sports betting is bringing in new fans, new eyeballs to our industry. And I never really looked at it that way, and so it's pretty cool. And it's just cool what you have, what you have developed in y'all's podcast. And man, it's just, I'm all ears. I didn't really know sports betting was really getting that big and drawing new fans into NASCAR. So it was kind of really cool to hear you speak about all that. And I hope it continues to grow, because, we have millions of fans all over the world. And, and I'm always thinking about the new generation, new kids coming out of high school, people, young kids going to college, getting out of college. And, and man, just like your passion and Dominic and Tyler's passion, we love the passion side and kind of feel like, how are we going to get that new fan base, and just hearing you talk is kind of really a big way of doing that.
Yeah, I think creativity is a huge part. Passion is, I think, the number one thing. And I kind of spoke on this briefly earlier, talking about like how I wanted to be different from other guys in the industry that weren't really in the industry, but there is kind of a growing number of guys coming out of the woods and jumping in to give NASCAR bets and starting NASCAR betting specific podcasts, which is great because the industry is growing, right?
Right.
I think the difference between me and a lot of these other people is I started off as a NASCAR fan that got into sports betting, but there's a lot of people that started off as sports bettors that became NASCAR fans because of it. And either way, it works and it's good. But I think the number one fuel to all of this is passion, right? But with all that being considered, the market is growing a lot. Like last year was a huge year for NASCAR and just motorsports in general. I mean, you can throw Formula One in there as well. Formula One's betting market is amazing, and NASCAR is right up there with it. IndyCar is a little bit behind, but collectively, I think we're going to see an amazing amount of growth, and just between all three of those world-class professional racing series. And we have actually seen, like, 2021 was a big year in realizing what the potential was, because we developed a lot of new fans in our community 100% through betting. And I think what people don't realize is that there's actually more of an intimate relationship a driver can create with the sport through sports betting. And prime example, there's a guy that joined our Discord, the Garage Guys Discord, and started following us and listening to our podcasts and our picks in 2021. He became a Kyle Larson fan because Kyle Larson won him so much money. And I know it's like it's unethical, right? Like you want to say it's like unethical for it to happen that way, but it's just legit. Like it's just fact. Like this guy told us, like we met him at the racetrack. He's decked out in Larson gear now because of all the big hits he's had, like through sports betting. And now he's actually a fan. Now he wants to meet Kyle Larson. Now he's watching all of Kyle Larson's dirt races and everything he's doing on social media. So there is a gateway that creates legitimate fans where now, like, if you ever want to hang it up on the sports betting side, that guy right there is probably going to watch forever until Kyle Larson leaves because he's wrapped in. Like, he's wrapped in as a Larson fan.
He's invested.
Exactly. And we've seen a lot of examples of that and gotten a lot of great DMs that reiterate that similar concept of how people have gotten into the sport and are staying into the sport because of it. And look, yeah, it's a weird, unorthodox avenue, absolutely, but it still works, right? And NASCAR knows that with the investments they've made with these sports books to promote it more and more, specifically with Barstool Sportsbook. And it's showing. It's showing. So it's been an awesome ride so far, and as I just cannot reiterate enough, it's going to continue to blow up as we continue forward.
Well, I think it's worth noting, too. I live, as you all know, in New Mexico, which is not the breeding grounds for motorsports and racing. UNM football and UNM Lobos basketball is like number one here before anything in Dallas Cowboys football. But to even go just take a stroll at one of the casinos 5-6 years ago, you didn't see any sports books here. And I think just looking at the industry as a whole and just seeing the acceptance of sports betting nationwide, it seemed like it was a destination thing 10, 15 years ago. You had to go to Las Vegas. You had to go put in the sports book there. You had to go do your bets that way. But nationwide, more and more states are softening this up and loosening up the restrictions on it. I got to say, guys, it's pretty cool going to Route 66 Casino west of Albuquerque, and you walk in, and there's the sheets for all the professional sports, and NASCAR's included on that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's not something I would have thought I would have seen even 3 or 4 years ago.
Well, and NASCAR openly embracing it. I remember Dom, friend of ours, Matt Humphrey, head of communications for NASCAR. I had tweeted something out about NASCAR betting, like something to the effect of, man, I wish I could put a bet down on this because, I was a hard card credential media member, and I get an email from Matt within 15 minutes. He's like, what are you talking about? You can bet on it. Of course. He's like, you're not working for a team. Yeah, you're more than welcome to go bet and share your bets out there. I'm like, well, okay, well, you don't have to tell me twice then. Just that excitement and embrace. I love to see there, Dale. And I think that this thing we've only touched the surface level on this right now.
Yeah, I totally agree. And we've made major strides, and now the investments are picking up more and more and more with NASCAR. And there's been a little bit of a ruckus, I will say, starting off the year. The offerings we feel like have been a little bit behind, and part of that is maybe the books are just smarter, right? They're being a little bit smarter than they were in 2022, not handing out free candy, right? Because one big advantage about all this is that it's such a, I think it's safe to say that there's a lot of people that would call this an exotic sport, right? Like not like one of your mainstream NFL, NHL, MLB, NBA. Like I think that's what would be considered like your big four.
Sure.
So there's not a lot of these odds makers and experts in other sports. They don't have a lot of specific knowledge about NASCAR because they don't have the eye test, right? And that's something I've always said about like myself is I'm very analytical. I use a lot of data. That eye test is very important. I haven't missed a cup race since 2005. I don't even know the last time I've missed a truck race or an Xfinity race. It's been a while where I've at least seen a portion of the live event, right? So that eye test is very important, and I think that can create advantages for some sports bettors like myself and a lot of other people who've had an eye on the sport for a really, really long time. But I think maybe that could be a reason why the offerings haven't been as great. If you've seen NASCAR betting Twitter, it's been after the Daytona 500, been a little, I would say, erupting over being a little bit more behind than we would have expected. But yeah. I think there's good reason to that, and there's no reason for me to believe that it won't continue to grow as the season goes on and explode in the upcoming years.
Well, the thing I like that you do best, Dale, is that you have fun with it. I mean, you're playing a character of some sorts, right? This whole Dale Tanhardt monster. Where did this come from?
Look, I just read what's off my driver's license. And I have the right story. So, when my parents were having me, my dad wanted to name me after Dale Earnhardt, but my mom wanted to name me Tanner because she really liked the name Tanner from the movie The Bad News Bears, a little blonde kid. So they just met in the middle and it had a fair compromise and went with Dale Tanhardt. So I mean that's it right there. And look, I'm from Mississippi. Go ahead and come at me with the stereotypes. It's all good. Like, big redneck state. You're gonna get some names like that around here, especially with Mississippi, Alabama being a lot of Earnhardt country, especially back in the day. So yeah, there you go.
Well, Dale, your parents did you a favor, dude. I think the name is perfect, spot on. You know what I mean? So,
absolutely,
yeah, that's a badass name, man. It's a cool, interesting story to hear how you got named. That's pretty awesome. What do y'all think, guys? That's pretty cool.
Oh, I love the name.
Bad News Bears, Dale Earnhardt.
There you go.
Yeah, middle somewhere.
Who would have thought? Very fair compromise.
Now, most everybody else's names are boring names. You got a cool one. So nobody has a cool story on how they got their name too. So not too many of us got a story like that. That's awesome.
I appreciate it.
Just do us all a favor. Just don't find yourself a Teresa Tanhardt.
Yeah, I'm not going to comment on that.
Yeah,
I hear that kind of sentiment a lot. I'll say that. Yeah.
I'll say this too, Dale. I'm not going. We've been told to stay away from a certain video. We're not going to go there. But I will say there is a picture of David on your wall. You've followed him for a long time. You've been a fan, admirer of David, right?
Yeah, I will say. So I'll give my points here. So 2004 is like the first year I remember specifically watching like every single Truck Series race. Like I was already watching Cup, decent amount. I was watching all of it, but like there's a point where that cognitive memory where you really were all in. And like 2004, I feel like I can tell about every single race I saw. Which I don't remember your first win, David. I know I cheated before we got on here like the other day. I know it was at Las Vegas, but to say I remember that race, I'd be lying. But I do remember Gateway of 2004, and I do remember Phoenix of 2004. But Gateway was like, that was the night that really made me just love truck racing, man. Like that's another thing, like outside of just Cup and Xfinity, like I work really, really hard to promote the Craftsman Truck Series. Like I'm so happy Craftsman is back because it really adds that nostalgic factor. Ratings are up on Truck Series racing over the past year. So I know that's a different conversation, but that Gateway race, Kenny Wallace in the booth just screaming every time they're wrecking with unlimited green light checkers. Then you move Chad Chaffin out of the way. That was pretty badass. So that's the good, David. But we'll talk. Go ahead.
Man, I remember that race like it was yesterday. The people say, out of all the 25 years, what races do you remember the most? And I always tell them the ones I should have won. There were so many of them I should have won, and, looking back on that race right there, and I don't even remember, and you brought me back to that year. NASCAR had said, we were tearing up a lot of trucks. We were having multiple green, white checkers, and you know how exciting the Truck Series has always been and will continue to be. Truck racing is to me some of the best racing out there, has been since the start of truck racing. But it's cool to see the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series back. It's like just it's nostalgia, and I don't know, that's the way I've always sometimes over the years. People say it's not Craftsman, Davis Camping World. I'm like, God dang it, I forgot, but
it should have brought back the Super Truck name while they were at it too.
Man,
of course.
That race back then, NASCAR had told the series had told Wayne Alton had told everybody, hey, St. Louis, this will be the last race that we have multiple green, white checkers. And man, we didn't even know it at the time, but then when we set that thing to rest in the pasture, that was one hell of a race, because I think there were 5 or 6 green white checkers, and looking back on it, I remember Shane Mill and Bobby Hamilton, the late great Bobby Hamilton. Those two guys had the two dominant trucks, okay, and and looking back on it, at best, I was a fifth place truck. I was just, we made our adjustments throughout the race, and we just couldn't get our truck to roll the center of the corner like we needed it to in turns 3 and 4. And we struggled there, and we were, I say struggle, we were better than a lot, but we wasn't going to win the race, but we were going to get a top 5 finish. And as that thing played out, I don't remember if it was Rick Crawford, Bobby Hamilton, but man, Shane Mill and the late great Bobby Hamilton, they took themselves out. Next thing you know, I'm like, man, hell, I'm in third place. I'm thinking, well, hell, this could be possible. And then next thing you know, I don't know. I don't remember if it was Rick Crawford or who was. Somebody climbed up on the back wall, the fence back there, and I don't know if they flipped over. The sparks were flying, and man, next thing you know, there were 3 or 4 green white checkers. We had to do it all over again. And the final one, I caught me. I'm in second place, and man, Chad Chafin's a great race car driver. He's a good friend of mine, but we found ourselves in a territory that we knew we didn't deserve because, like I said, at best, I was a fifth place truck. But once he took the lead right there at the end, went down into turn 1, he was just playing defense. He was playing defense. He really slowed his truck down in the center of the corner to be able to get good forward bite off the corner. And hell, my truck rolled the center pretty good in 1 and 2. I was just struggling over there in 3 and 4, but I rolled up to him and put a little bumper to him, just enough to make him wiggle, man. And I got underneath him, and man, we dragged wastebound down the back straightaway. I really thought that he was going to pass me back because my truck was where I was struggling the whole race was on the other end. And I'm thinking, man, he's going to turn underneath me off turn 4 and win the race. And man, and he never did. We ended up winning the race, but man, that was a crazy race. Thinking about, man, I can't believe it's been that long ago. You know what I mean? Hell, that's 2004. Wow. That was over 20 years. I mean, almost 20 years ago, so yeah, crazy.
I was 8 years old, and I'll never forget that race. It was just,
man, you were 8 years. And, so we were just, obviously racing in California. And I was talking, I think, Danny Lawrence from RCR. I'm trying to remember who it was. They said, damn, Star, we've been doing this, and I'm trying to, might have been Joe Dan Bailey.
Okay.
Friend of the show.
Yeah, Joe Dan Bailey. And I think it was Joe Dan. Where he was telling me the years he won a championship with Dale Earnhardt, and he asked me about some racing. We were changing stories, and he said, hell, Star, only thing we're doing is talking about how old we are. I said, well, hell, yeah, no doubt about it, but we're still out here getting after it, buddy. So, I said, even though we're the old guys and have all these stories, we're still out here getting after it. And that was, so that was pretty cool. But man, it's kind of like you, Dale, and Dominic and Tyler. We're blessed and fortunate, and we're very passionate about what we do. And for me personally, I'm been blessed more than I deserve to be able to race as long as I have been. I'm not quitting anytime soon, but man, to do it for 25 years, it's, man, I pinch myself at times because, man, it was just a dream, and here I am 25 years later, kind of like all of us, so yeah, pretty cool.
Living the dream. But I do have a Tyler asked, so I'm glad we're going to just bring it up just because it has been lingering back here. But on my betting show, I classify drivers based off of things that happen, like if they do me good, like if they win me money or if they don't, right? So a few years ago, 2021 Homestead, and this isn't even as much about the betting side of things, David. This is about daily fantasy sports. I don't know if you are as familiar with DFS, where you make lineups, like a DraftKings lineup or whatever. I had you and Noah Gragson in a lineup together for Homestead 2021, and it was I suck at DFS. I'm not good at it. Got to have a lot of things go right.
Right.
But in this race, it was the perfect storm. Like I had the best combination. And I looked with about 15 to go. I put down like $140 in lineups, which a lot of the big DFS like monsters, they'll put in thousands of dollars of entry fees and they'll rake out 10 to 20 grand,
Right.
I put in about $140 and I looked and I was winning about $18,000. I was gonna win one tournament.
140?
Yeah, I was gonna win one tournament and
Hey.
second in the other.
Wow.
And like I said, I had Noah Gragson was like my top guy, and you were in that lineup as well, and you had a bunch of points because you're running the lead lap top 15, top 18.
It's like 7th.
I mean, just having a great run for a lot of different guys in this lineup. And then when you blew the tire and hit the wall, I lost all of it. All of it. Went down to 0. So this back here, I just it's just banter. Like everything on the wall changes a lot. I call it the wall of Dale draft. And I redraft it, every week based off of what happens the week before.
Yeah.
But this is like the scarring one, right? Like 17 grand, David, just out of my pocket. And
Dude,
in that
man, I definitely apologize to you. If I could have finished, looking back on that race, for our team, and I don't remember what team it was.
NBM.
Yeah, my buddy Carl Long, for them, it was probably one of their better runs over the years. We were going to finish in the top 10. I think we were running 9th or 10th at the time. And there was only 2 or 3 laps to go. And, I remember my spotter saying, hey, 3 or 4 I'm going to run out of gas. So, so they were talking about that on the radio. Stay after it because there's some, be careful. Someone's going to run out of gas in front of you. And also my spotter was saying, hey, the leader is coming off turn 2. And here I was still on the lead lap with about 2 laps to go and 3 laps to go, whatever it was. And so I don't even think I was halfway down the back straightaway when they said, hey, I think they might have said 20 car lengths back, 20 back, because here's the deal. For me, I've been on both ends of the spectrum. I've been blessed that I've been equal, that I've had the chance to be one of those guys that runs up front week in and week out and contended for wins. I've been fortunate that I've had that. Now, the last 10 years, 11 years, whatever, that the drivers had to start bringing money to the table, and the money dictates how much money you bring, dictates the quality of team you get. I'm still making a living and doing what I love to do. But coming off turn 2, I remember when I was leading races, and I'm like, man, telling my spotter, hey, make sure they give me enough room up there. You know what I mean? It's just you learn respect for the leaders because the leaders have the right at the end of the race. You got to get the hell out of their way. You don't want to change the way the race plays out because you're racing somebody. Hey, they have the right. Get out of the way. Let them race it out. And, I've been on both ends of that. So, I've always been respectful to the leaders because I didn't have a winning car. You don't want to be in the way. And when they said, hey, the leader's 20 back, I was paying attention to that, because in my mind, when they say the leader is 10 back, then you got to get the hell out of the way. You know what I mean? And so when they said 20 car lengths back or whatever, I got about halfway down the back straightaway, and I could feel my right front tire. I could feel that I was having some type of issue with the right front. So I knew that the leader was coming because just a couple feet behind me, I had heard 20 car lengths back. So, the leader's coming, and all of a sudden I feel something going on with my tire. So I get out of the gas and I turn the car down like in the middle of the, kind of leave the high, at Homestead, when you got all these laps on the tires, we're all on the wall. So you got to leave a lane for the leader on the wall, Unfortunately for him and me, because I was having such a great run, with 2 laps to go, the freaking right front tire blew out, and in the lane I was going to give the leader, no matter who the leader was, the lane I was going to give the leader, obviously when the tire blew out, the car turned right and hit the freaking wall. And the next thing you know, you're getting run in from behind. It was just a perfect storm to take $17,000 or $18,000 out of your pocket. You know what I mean? And believe me, I wish you'd have won $40,000, and I wish we would have finished that race in the top 10 because I had learned that 2 other people that wasn't too far in front of me that were in the top 10 had run out of gas. So it would have been a 6th or 7th place finish for our MBM Motorsports team, Carl Long. It would have been big for us. And unfortunately, it's just racing. That kind of stuff happens. You know what I mean? I was disappointed that it happened. You again, respectful to the leaders always, no matter what year it is and no matter when it is. When the leaders are coming, you get the hell out of their way. That's just how we race. How I've always raced. And man, if I could have done anything to have kept my car off the wall and not change the outcome of the race, our tire blowing out changed the outcome of the race. And you never want to be that person, but sometimes those things happen and out of your control, and that one was out of my control, but I'm sorry you lost 18 grand, but we lost a lot more.
It's yeah, I figured.
Yeah.
No, that's perspective too. That's real. That's
just real stuff,
Yeah.
and absolutely. And I won't bore us, so we could sit here and bore ourselves with all these crazy stories. I think
that's what we call a bad beat, right?
Yeah.
I think maybe the same year, because I was driving Carl Long's Cup car at whenever he asked me to, and I remember us running it was the
Phoenix
year
race.
that Larson won the championship. We were running Phoenix, and we were running 25th place, respectful for a cup team like Carl Long's that we really don't have no business being out there, but we were beating people and our cars were halfway competitive, and I don't remember that. Y'all can tell me, I just don't remember how it all played out, but I think with like 10 laps to go into the championship race at Phoenix, my right front or left front brake rotor exploded, and we were lucky that we did not destroy a race car, because you go down into turn 3 at Phoenix and your brake rotor explodes, you're going to kill a race car, but all I was thinking was I was disappointed, because I said, hell, we were going to finish in the top 25, in a cup race for Carl Long. I thought that was pretty cool, very competitive, respectful. And not only did we not finish and we didn't crash the car, but we changed the way that race played out, because Dominic and Tyler I don't remember who was leading. Whoever was leading had a big lead. And when we brought the caution out, it changed the way the race finished. It changed up the championship, But
I think it was
again, out of my control, you know what I mean? It's just one of those things that happens,
I remember
that's
the
just
internet,
racing. Yeah.
I remember the internet erupting after that. Kyle Larson fans, David, they loved you. And Martin Truex fans, not so much.
Well, I remember also Denny Hamlin was running him down. Was kind of catching Truex there at the end, and then Larson had the big time pit stop, and that propelled him.
Yeah, and just going back over it over the years, you have to be respectful to the leaders. Always have to. It's just the way, it's just the way the game works. You don't want to change the way the race ends or way it plays out, just because I always hated when I was going to win a race or run in second, and then you'd have a lap car or a truck that was a couple laps down get in your way, and really it took the opportunity away from you, and you're like, man, they ought to have more respect for the leaders. So being on that side of it for as long as I was, and then the rest of my career, just being able to just be out there racing, you never wanted to change or get in the way of the leaders. That's just respect, and man, those two races right there, just out of your control, you changed the outcome of the race big time. You know what I mean? It was just nuts. It's just racing, and
the last thing I was going to say in the video that you aforementioned earlier, Tyler, I did say, I know it's not David's fault. It's not David's fault. I just have to be mad at something, Well, that's what we do as sports bettors. We got to blame something. Right?
You got to blame somebody, you know what I mean? And hell, sometimes, you just got to take the blame, and, there's been times, and I'll share this real quick with you, because, when you were trying to stay on the lead lap, and I'm trying to be respectful to the guy that's going to win the stage. He's going to win the stage and get all those points, and he's trying to hold off the second place guy. But I was running 18th or 19th, trying to be the guy to stay on the lead lap. I'm fighting with another car, and you're doing your damnedest to make sure you can stay ahead of the car, don't pass you, and you stay out of the leader's way. But when you're not talking about the end of the race, you're talking about for us to stay on the lead lap. Hell, I'm fighting like hell, and I won't mention who the driver was, but one time after the race, the driver come up to me, said, I didn't appreciate you getting in my way, And I said, hey, buddy, anytime you want to change cars, I'll be glad to change cars with you any day. And don't ever expect me to get out of your way, because I have just as much opportunity to be on the racetrack as you were. If you were coming to the checker flag to win the race, I would have been out of your way. You would never even seen me. I'd have been way out of your way. But since it was only the second stage, I let him know what was on my mind, and I can't say what I told him, but I told him anytime his happy ass wanted to get out of his seat and let me drive that car and him drive mine, I'd be glad to change with him. And he didn't want to agree to that. So, but anyway, it's just racing, man.
Oh, yeah.
That's what makes it fun too.
Absolutely.
Dale, before we get to some headlines in the sport here, we've gone this long without asking for some betting advice here. I know it's early. We haven't seen practice or qualifying or anything like that.
Should I take a break during this segment, Tyler?
This is the part where you just be quiet and smile.
Okay. Dave. All right.
Yeah. We won't tell NASCAR. David is not placing any bets here in case NASCAR is listening. We always know they're listening too. Dale, what are some of the bets you like going into this weekend there at Vegas?
Yeah, so I think I'll go ahead and start out by saying right now, I'm probably staying away from Xfinity. We got these Cup guys cherry picking. Kyle Busch is in the All-Star car, and I kind of want Xfinity feels in the most doubt. But there are some other things I've noticed in trucks and Cup, and I'll start with Cup. And I don't know what this line is right now. Pulling up Barstool Sportsbook. But I went ahead and grabbed Daniel Suarez and Bubba Wallace, 44-1 and 41-1, respectively. When you look at Bubba Wallace and 23XI, intermediate program was amazing towards the end of last year. And obviously, the program swept Kansas. But after Bubba's Kansas win, he probably should have won Michigan if Kevin Harvick doesn't get a lucky caution. Let's throw that in there, too. I think Michigan is a similar, somewhat comparable racetrack to Vegas if you want to look at data to pull from. And the fall Vegas race, Bubba was very competitive before the issue with Kyle Larson. So didn't get to see what he had at Homestead. But remember, John Hunter Nemechek was in that car for Homestead. It was running top 3 early in that race before he spun out and wrecked, which just Gen 7 inexperience, right? So the program was on fire at racetracks that were similar to Vegas or Vegas itself. Towards the end, especially the second half of 2022. So when I look at Bubba Wallace, I'm not saying he's the favorite. I'm not saying I think he's going to be the number one guy. But when you look and see him at 40-1, $100 wins you $4,000 if he wins. That's crazy value for what could be one of the fastest cars in the field, right? There's a chance, and with how good Bubba was at qualifying as well at these intermediates, if Bubba comes out and has impressive lap averages in practice and then comes out and qualifies in the top 5, hell, even the top 10, you're not going to see 40-1 anymore. You're not going to see 30-1 anymore. You're going to see more like 20-1 or 15-1. So all your value is going to be gone. So that's a good example of a play that you should dial in early. Barstool Sportsbook has them at 30-1 right now. I still think that's a decent line to sprinkle on, right? So Daniel Suarez as well. Now we can look at last week, and one thing I was wrong about. I went on SiriusXM with Pete Pistone and gave some NASCAR betting advice. I kind of faded Trackhouse. I was like, hey, look, no practice, no qualifying. I think the teams like Toyota, the Goliath teams of Gibbs and Hendrick and some improvements from Roush, Keselowski, Stewart-Haas, I think we're going to see a little bit of regression from Trackhouse. I think it's safe to say that so far I'm extremely wrong about that. So I like Daniel Suarez. If you're going to give me 44-1, which now that line is 25-1, just for some advice to anybody listening that's not familiar with betting in the NASCAR world, that is a massive change in a line within a day and a half of lines coming out, right? So I grabbed Daniel Suarez at 44-1. I would still bet it at 25-1 too, though. And that's where I see it on Barstool Sportsbook. I don't know what DraftKings has. I think you can maybe find 30-1 somewhere else. but Suarez was 50 to 1 on DraftKings earlier, which is crazy. Some sports books have completely shredded that in half. And just from an analytical standpoint, Daniel Suarez was very fast last week, along with Ross Chastain. And in the last 50 laps of that race, was one of the top 3 fastest cars on the track in a long green flag run. So when you consider how good Suarez was at intermediates last year, where he didn't get the finishes, remember I think he had the best car in the Coke 600, crashed. Had a really good car at Kansas too, crashed. Was really good at Vegas last year as well. Not getting the finishes, I think, is just a inexperienced thing with Suarez. First time he's been behind the wheel of a super competitive situation. You can talk about Joe Gibbs Racing when he took over the 19 with Carl Edwards leaving. Think he was kind of rushed into that situation, never saw the full potential, never saw the full potential with Stewart Haas Racing, and now we're here at Trackhouse. The full potential's here. He's got the win. He's got the monkey off his back with getting that first win. I think you're going to see Daniel Suarez win on an oval this year, and maybe more than once, especially after what we've seen with Trackhouse just at Fontana to start the season. So I think Daniel Suarez is a good value play. Everything else on Cup, I'm going to wait till we see some practice and qualifying time. I think it's a little too scary to invest too much before we see our first true practice session of the year, right? So I think that could throw us all for a loop on who might have speed and who learned something from Fontana and who's carrying the most over from similar racetracks in 2022. And I'll throw in one truck bet that I cannot believe is an existing line. Talked about how Xfinity, I'm a little worried because you got Kyle Busch jumping down. I think you got a couple other guys, but you have the same thing happening in trucks too with Kyle Busch and Chastain. But I really like Corey Heim. Toyota has moved all their marbles from KBM, who's now a Chevy team, into this Tricon Garage team. They are going to have good trucks. And now you pair Corey Heim with Scott Zipadelli, who was a Goliath on intermediate tracks with Brett Moffitt and Austin Hill dating back from 2016 on to 2021. I think Tyler Ankrum is a little more of an anomaly because I think the talent level isn't there compared to what Moffitt and Austin Hill have. And I think we've seen that over the years. But now you bring Scott Zipadelli over, who's won twice at Vegas with Austin Hill, won a bunch of races at similar tracks like Michigan and Kansas. You bring him over with a prodigy in Corey Heim, who won 2 races last year. Caesars Sportsbook has him at 14 to 1. Yeah, I get it. Kyle Busch is in the field. Yeah, I get it. Ross Chastain's in the field. But remember a couple of years ago, John Hunter Nemechek hopped in a really fast Toyota truck and beat Kyle Busch at Vegas to start the season off outside of Daytona. John Hunter Nemechek was 12 to 1 in that race. And I thought that was the craziest line ever. I hammered it. He won that race. I could see the same exact thing happening with Corey Heim this weekend at Las Vegas. If you're going to give me 14 to 1, I'm going to hammer that all day long.
Dominic, I know you just started to get into the NASCAR betting yourself. You made some money recently. I like this idea of betting Corey Heim here.
That might be an undervalued pick there, and especially when you have the analytical side like that, like Dale's bringing in, it's hard not to look at it. Like even looking at Vegas this weekend, like I think Dale brings up a great point. You really don't want to invest too much before you see what practice and qualifying, what that product's going to look like. But hearing Daniel Suarez be that much of an overvalued pick, man, that's one heck of a pick. I mean, 50 to 1, Tyler. Somebody puts $5 on that's a $250 win.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see why this is big business, folks.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, kidding. Dale, we'll have you stick around. I got a couple more things that we'll get to before we officially wrap up here. Dominic,
by the way, real quick,
go ahead.
Daniel Suarez is still 50 to 1 on DraftKings Sportsbook. I don't understand how that's even possible. That doesn't make sense.
No,
like you would think that line would have been hammered down by now. It was hammered down on Barstool. I got it on FanDuel because I'm in Mississippi, and similar to New Mexico, I have to go to a casino and bet, or I have to go over to Louisiana and bet. So when I saw the line, I was like, I don't have access to DraftKings. I found 44 to 1 on FanDuel, which is close enough for me to feel like I got good value. But for DraftKings to leave him hanging at this moment at 50 to 1 is blasphemy, in my opinion. But yeah, sorry.
Yeah. We'll get to our news and notes segment next. Also have our mailbag at the end of the show, our Ask David questions for both Dale and David before we wrap up here. Dominic, what do we got? What are the headlines in the sport this week?
We've got a 2-for-1, folks. So we brought you the news. Well, we didn't break it, but we're just sharing the news that Kyle Larson is going to be doing the double in 2024. But it's actually a 2-for-1. Jenna Fryer with the Associated Press was the first to report that Kyle Larson's McLaren deal to run the Indianapolis 500 is going to be for consecutive seasons. Larson will have the opportunity to run the Indianapolis 500 in 2024 and 2025. So we're going to get to see a double in back-to-back years, Tyler.
Yeah, that's exciting, David. We'll start with you. We thought it was just the one. Instead, it's back-to-back years for Kyle Larson running the double. That's pretty exciting.
Man, that's good. That's awesome news. You know, it'd be kind of cool to see a NASCAR guy jump over there and win the Indianapolis 500. You know, like Tony Stewart. If there's anybody can do it, Kyle Larson has the ability, the talent. He can jump in any race car. He's so diverse and not only get in any type of race car and win. And you know, I think all of us will probably agree with this. We'll get him. We'll see him in the Indy car, and I think he'll go. I think he'll adapt to it right away. And and you know, knowing the backing he'll have from Hendricks and you know, and guys, I forget what team it's going to be with. Have they mentioned that yet? Who?
Arrow McLaren.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there's a winning combination right there. Man, I'm just excited. It'd be kind of cool to see him win an Indianapolis 500, then jump on a helicopter, get on a jet, and make it back, run a Coca-Cola 600. You know, can you imagine winning an Indianapolis 500? Have to cut all the media short because you got to jump on a helicopter and go win the Coca-Cola 600. Would that be amazing, man? So, man, just the excitement around Kyle Larson having the opportunity to do that back-to-back is just incredible. When Kurt Busch, Jimmy Johnson, you know, I think Kurt probably did the best 3 or 4 years ago. And I think Jimmy was running really good last year. Last year's Indianapolis 500 ended up wrecking towards the end, but he was running really strong. But I think Kurt Busch really impressed me the most. And I don't know where he finished. It might have been in the top 10,
6.
But he was impressive. But, man, you talking about Kyle Larson. You're talking about one of the all-time best and so diverse. Man, I'm so excited to see how that all turns out. We know it's possible we could see back-to-back wins in the same day in the 2 biggest races in the world. Be pretty awesome.
Now, I don't know about you, but I look at Kyle Larson with his driving abilities of somebody going from NASCAR to IndyCar as opposed to like Tony Stewart, who went from IndyCar to NASCAR. I don't know of anybody that probably has a better chance to win in Indy and win the Indy 500 that's making the move of NASCAR to IndyCar than Kyle Larson does with this back-to-back program package here.
Yeah, we actually had Kyle on our show not too long ago and asked him about it. We actually asked him if we could, because I'm a huge Indy 500 guy. Like one of the first events I started going to was the Indy 500 about 12 years ago, and I've been every year since except for the COVID year and maybe one other year. I think I missed the 100th, but I've never been to a Coke 600 because I'm always at the Indy 500. It's the greatest fan experience for just a racing atmosphere, racing weekend in the world, I think. And talking about Kyle Larson here, I think it's really important to note that the level of preparation that's going into this, like David said, like having Hendrick behind him. But what we see with like Kurt Busch is like you just find out, hey, Kurt's hopping in a ride. He hopped in a ride, finished 6th. AJ Allmendinger a few years before that hopped in a ride, got in the top 10. This isn't Kyle Larson hopping in a ride. This is a 1.5-year preparation on a 2-year deal. So this is like a full-on, all-in to win the 500 type of thing here. Like it is such a legit process that we haven't seen in a long time. Like usually you see these guys, if they do try to run the double, you just find out they hopped in a ride and they're going to wheel it. There is some serious preparation going on here. And considering that Arrow McLaren had lightning fast race cars in last year's Indy 500 as well, man, I mean, the sky's the limit here. I mean, I think with the driver talent, there's a chance he could go back to back. Now that is going to be very, very tough, but if he doesn't win it in 2024, like that experience and that preparation is going to be massive coming back the next year. I mean, massive. And you know, I'd like to do the double. We asked Kyle if we could jump in the cargo of his jet so we could fly out there to Charlotte with him after he won the Indy 500, and maybe he'll let us. We'll see. But I hope he wins it, man. And it would be such a good look for NASCAR, right? Like I love when NASCAR guys run Indy because if they're able to go out there and beat some of the best open wheel drivers on planet Earth, it's such a good look for the sport of NASCAR entirely. And if anybody can do it, it's Kyle Larson or Kyle Busch. No question about it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You have
And,
about a year and a half to try and convince Kyle to let him get on the jet with you there, Dale.
Yeah, we got some time.
Yeah. I think Kyle Busch's day is coming too. It might be both Kyles in that Indy 500 next year when it's all said and done. We'll see. Dominic, what else we got going on?
Speaking of open wheel guys, what about the possibility of seeing another Formula One champion try their hand at the NASCAR Cup Series? Jenson Button, the 2009 Formula One champion, may take his stab at a NASCAR Cup Series race someday. He told frontstretch.com, an oval, probably not. A road course, you may see that happen someday. And he's also been seen at some of these NASCAR races on the West Coast. He was at the LA Coliseum race. He was at the race in Fontana with his son this past weekend. And he has his hand with the NASCAR Garage 56 entry. And plus, he is running the 24 Hours of Le Mans with a former Hendrick Motorsports driver and 7-time champion in Jimmy Johnson, and Mike Rockenfeller, who's running the Cup Series as well. Perhaps we see Jenson, Tyler, make a stab at the Cup Series like Kimi Rankonenn did last year.
Yeah, that would be very interesting. Dale, let's start with you. What do you think of that possibility here?
Yeah, I totally understand these guys from Formula One not wanting to run ovals just because of the danger potential involved in getting hurt. And, for Jenson Button, as decorated as an announcer he is in the Formula One world, the Braun situation back in 2009 is one of the best Formula One stories of all time. And I love that was such a big underdog story at that time when he broke through and won the championship. So I have so much respect for him. I actually got to see him at the Rolex 24 when that announcement was made about the Garage 56 entry. And I was shocked that he was even there. And seeing him more incorporated into the NASCAR world after someone like Kimi Rankonenn gives it a shot. And I hope Kimi Rankonenn is back again in a Trackhouse entry. And I don't know what the chances are. I'm not an expert in this kind of thing. I'd love to see Jenson Button. Do I know that he'll do it? Do I know that the chances are high? No, I have no clue. But it would be really cool to see more of those guys come over and run our series because they have an amazing international audience. So it literally cannot hurt NASCAR. It can only help if they jump over. And, I think for us, it makes it more fun as race fans to see more talent compete with our talent at the highest level of stock car racing. So there's nothing but good things that could come from this.
What say you, David? What's your thoughts on all this?
Well, like just what Dale's saying, it just goes to show you around the world, the international race car drivers, Formula One race car drivers, former Formula One champions, wanting to come to America and compete in the highest level of stock car racing there is, NASCAR Cup Series. It just goes to show you how big, how powerful our sport is. You know what I mean? I mean, people from all over the world, former champions in Formula One racing. I mean, that says it all right there, and having that international driver or Formula One champion come and jump into a NASCAR race car and run a road course just brings so many new eyeballs from around the world onto our sport that we know is already worldwide, So I think, I don't know all the stories behind all the F1 champions. Wouldn't, listen to Dale speak. It's very interesting. I don't follow it that closely, or I really don't follow it that much. I know with the Netflix, with this Formula One Netflix series they've had, my whole neighborhood comes by and tells me, "Oh, have you seen?" And I'm like, "No, I haven't." But to have former champions and former or current Formula One drivers wanting to come to America to race in the Cup Series just goes to show you, it's good for our sport. It's good for auto racing, and it just goes to show you how big that the world thinks about NASCAR Cup racing in America.
Oh yeah, Dominic. Who would you like to see in a Cup car in the near future from maybe some of these other series?
Man, I think it would be really cool to see. He's had top equipment his entire time. He's raced in Formula One. He was a child prodigy who ended up being the big star that everybody anticipated. What could Lewis Hamilton do on a road course in the Cup Series? Let's say that Trackhouse 91 project team. Really good equipment, really good road course racer. How would he do in a Cup car? I'd love to see Lewis Hamilton take a stab.
I think it was Max Verstappen a while back, Dale, that it got leaked that the only iRacing he does is trucks at Talladega. I don't know what the chances are that happening in real life, but I'd love to see that.
Yeah, I think it was his account, right? Like me and my buddy Matt Wishart. He's a photographer, does a lot of good stuff with Trackhouse actually. But we were in this race together, and we spent like first of all, Verstappen ran into me and crashed me, and it was the big wreck in front of me. I hit the brakes, and he just like full on did not stop, hit me in the back, and I hit the wall. And
Hey, Dale. Dale, I remember that race because you cost me $18,000. I bet on you. It was only a $75 bet, and I'm like, man, I'm gonna, I was gonna for the first time ever, I was,
Betting on iRacing. That's
about to say, hey,
behavior
I thought that was
Now
safe, dude. And man, just think of all that money I could have had if you wouldn't have crashed that day, dude.
Hey, look, you can't be mad. Look, if you're betting on iRacing, you're the next level degenerate, right? You're next level degenerate betting right there, Mr. Davis. But it was so funny. We did all this research, and we're like 99% sure it was his account. Now, whether or not it was him on his account, you would think so. But I had heard somebody say that when Max was streaming one time on iRacing, like maybe when COVID was happening, he said like one of his favorite things to run is trucks at Talladega. C-Fix racing is what they call it. So I think it was him, and man, he has no brakes. He has no brakes. He ran right through me, right freaking through me.
Man, that sounds familiar, dude.
That's
I love this, man. I love this.
Time for our Ask David segment, our final segment of the show. We ask you to submit questions to us on Facebook, facebook.com/Star Podcast, Twitter @StarPodcast, and by email, davidstarpodcast@gmail.com. First question in the inbox this week on Twitter from Connor the Lawner writes in, I don't know the context of this, so we'll see where this goes. The question for Dale. What does it take to convert a Netflix user into a NASCAR fan?
That's funny because David just talked. So there's probably a lot of F1 fans that don't like me because the Drive to Survive craze, like I make fun of it so much because it's been great for Formula One, right? Like their presentation's been amazing in creating a much more massive American fan base. But the thing that I like to do is call F1 fans Netflix subscribers. So that's kind of been my lingo on a lot of our podcasts, and people that don't know us who just randomly see one of my videos up on TikTok get real angry, and I love it because they'll all start commenting and just yelling, and it's so mad. And what would it take to? What was the question to convert a user?
Hey, Dale, now you know how I feel.
All right, look, I love this. I love getting burned by David. I deserve it.
It's all good, man.
No, look, I think what could convert a Netflix user, a Formula One fan, to a NASCAR fan? What we just talked about. Kimi Rankonenn. Kimi Rankonenn comes over, does really well. Max Verstappen maybe comes over, does well in a road course race. Or as one of you guys said, Lewis Hamilton comes over. I think that's a good avenue to start with. More of those guys coming over to our sport. Who is that, Connor? I hope that answers your question. We need more Formula One guys coming over and racing our road course races in the Cup Series like we talked about a second ago. I think that's a great avenue to start.
Yeah, I think that's a very good answer there.
Hey, Tyler, what was the question again?
Okay, I'm going to read this real slow for you, David.
All right.
What does it take to convert a Netflix user into a NASCAR fan?
And well, hey, look, if you've been listening to Dale speak and hearing Dale's story, all you got to do is go to, what a sports betting booking or whatever, and put a bet in for $100. Bet however, he's been hearing our podcast, and if you win 18,000, I bet you'll turn that Netflix viewer into a freaking NASCAR fan. You know what I mean? Instantly, right, Dale?
Yeah.
Am I right? I mean, I think that's what you do. Tell them, Dale, explain to them how that works. And I think, man, if that person will do what y'all been talking about this betting stuff, and they win, I can assure you that they're not only going to become a big NASCAR fan, they're going to have a favorite driver soon after as well.
For life.
Look, maybe they might become a David Starr fan because you gave the advice. Let's go there too, right?
There you go.
Yeah, I think that's actually like a great answer on the theme of all this is like betting on the sport, right? Like maybe a Formula One guy who bets on Formula One doesn't like what he's getting on those odds because it's so different than NASCAR. Like you'll look at
much more predictable.
Correct.
F1.
So they just oversaturate their lines for their race winners. Like Max Verstappen will be like a minus 200 favorite to win. Like that's not as near as fun to bet on. NASCAR, your favorites plus 600 or plus 700. So I think actually, like all jokes aside, that's a good avenue to get into is the betting side of it.
Yeah, I know nothing about it.
Nothing.
Okay.
Nothing.
You know nothing, David. That's correct.
Just hearing y'all. Dale educated me. I mean, I really don't know that much about it. Never really paid attention to it, and will continue to stay far away from it. From my perspective. But
no. You're David. Your type of gambling. You're a blackjack guy, though, right?
Oh, absolutely, dude. Absolutely.
Hey, come on down. Come on down to Biloxi. We'll go to the Bow or the Hard Rock. We'll play some blackjack. I do it every now and then. That's my casino game too. Is blackjack.
Well, Dale, that'll work, buddy. I'll take you up. I'll take you up on that offer sometime during the year this year.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Another question. This one's from Alex. This one's for David, but I think everyone can answer this here. Alex wants to know, David, what did you give up for Lent?
Well, for you, those that know me, I gave up ice cream.
Oh,
Really?
That's a good one. You know what I mean? Because y'all know that's a tough one for me. That's one of my downfalls. I love ice cream, but I did give up ice cream for Lent.
And I can attest to that. Every time we go out with David to go eat, Tyler, there's a bowl of ice cream for dessert.
I think it was like the second time I ever went to dinner with David, Dale. We go to the Olive Garden in Kansas City, out by Kansas Speedway, and just across the track there. And this guy, he asked for a Dr. Pepper float, and I didn't even see ice cream on the menu there, but they found a way to make him a Dr. Pepper float. So.
How about that? I think Whataburger has a Dr. Pepper float.
Absolutely, they do.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Man, I like to get a good milkshake from Whataburger every now and then. But
absolutely, man.
I'm simple. I just want a vanilla.
Even when you got whiplash from a wreck, you can always pull into that Whataburger and they'll have you a shake, and it kind of fixes everything,
Hell yeah.
You buy a lot of Whataburger at that $18,000,
Yeah, could have, should have, would have, right?
Dominic, you're telling me you got a list of things you gave up for Lent, right?
Well, every year I try to give up a couple of things, and one thing I'll try to do is like stay away from added sugar to things, so like no sugary cereals. Like, hey, David, you'd be proud of me. I had some ice cream earlier this week, but it was ice cream with no added sugar, so I didn't feel bad on that.
Then I wouldn't call that ice cream, Dom.
Still cream.
You gave up something else. I don't know what you have, but that's definitely not ice cream, dude.
Yeah, that's just milk, right?
I guess so. Frozen milk, but no sugar, no alcohol. I try to do
there you go, man.
I will tell you guys, one year I did give up meat for Lent. That was pretty tough.
Couldn't do
Man,
it.
you don't know what tough is giving up ice cream, dude. That's real tough.
Would you rather give up meat or ice cream for Lent?
Yeah. I'm not Catholic, so I didn't give up anything for Lent. Enjoyed
there
life.
You go, Tyler.
Yeah. Gosh, what a fun show we've had here today, Dale. One more note before we go here. I've been told that it's your birthday, right?
Kind of, sort of. It's like,
Dale, is today your birthday?
Well, kind of, not really, but yes. So I know that sounds so confusing. I was born on February 29th. So my birthday's once every 4 years, technically. So we're not.
I've never met anybody born on a leap year till today. Wow,
really? It's crazy.
Awesome.
I've met like 4 people. I think I've met like 4 or 5. But yeah, it's not a leap year this year. So I kind of, I guess, have my pick if I want it to be February 28th or March 1st, but technically I don't turn until March 1st. So I'm 6 3/4 now. I turn 7 next year. That will be my 7th birthday. So I'm 6.7 years old as of what, an hour from now? Yeah, about
Well,
now.
hey,
Yeah.
when happy birthday to you, whether you're 6.7 or 7, happy birthday to you, dude. And man,
Appreciate
it's, should call your mom and dad and tell them thank you for having you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We're gonna go
for being 6.5 or 7 or whatever you are. You're very knowledgeable for something that takes 21 and older.
Absolutely, man.
You're right. You're right. They'll catch me eventually. They'll be like, "Hey, wait a second. Hold on. We got to go back there. You've only had 6 birthdays."
Yeah.
And we might get in some trouble then. But yeah, I'll be eating some dinner with the fam tomorrow. That's for sure.
Awesome, man. Well, happy birthday, dude. That's pretty cool, man.
With Dale Tanhardt Sr. and the whole gang.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Dale, before we go here, where can people find you and see all the great stuff you're doing, man?
Yeah, it's just at Dale Tanhardt on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and then the Garage Guys NASCAR podcast on YouTube, where we do betting previews and driver interviews, and then the Garage Guys NASCAR podcast on any of your favorite audio platforms, Apple, Spotify, Google Play. We're on all of it. So, and Garage Guys collectively, the account is Garage Guys FS on Twitter, and then Garage Guys Racing on Instagram, TikTok. We're trying to get the Garage Guys Racing handle for Twitter, but someone else already has it, and I don't know how to get it. Yeah, so we're kind of scattered on the name a little bit, a little bit off on the brand recognition. But yeah, that's our platform, that's our podcast, and I think if you like NASCAR content, if you like motorsports content, you'll enjoy our content as well. So I appreciate the shout out.
Yeah, of course, of course. Go around the room before we get out of here. What we got going on this week? Dominic, you and I we're off to Vegas this weekend.
We're off to Las Vegas. We'll be there for the NASCAR race weekend. It's going to be a lot of fun. Look forward to seeing you and David and everybody else part of the crew. We'll have Jonathan Field, Joe Larquente, who was your fill-in a few months back, will be there to help us with our coverage at theracingexperts.com. And an old friend of the show too, John Haverland. Even he was invited.
Who invited John? Awesome. Goodness. I'll be out there getting to fly in Friday, and I'm going to pull the old red eye on Monday morning to make it back to work. David told me not to do that last year. I did it anyway, and it worked out, so I'm doing that again.
Not for your first day of work, man. I'm like, come on, you're going to take a red eye going to your
first day at my new job last year. Yeah.
Like, man.
Well, a year later, I'm still employed. They didn't fire me.
Absolutely, that's a good thing.
Dale, are you going to see you out in Vegas?
No, we'll be out in St. Petersburg for the IndyCar opener. We're going to be doing some more IndyCar stuff this year on the media side. So trying to bring more light to the IndyCar series along with NASCAR. So we're going to be flying around to both throughout the year. So can't wait. I've never been to St. Petersburg and always have wanted to go down there, especially for this particular event. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to miss Vegas, though. You know, I'm a gambler, man. I have too much fun out there. So probably a good thing. We'll come back to Vegas in the fall.
St. Pete sounds fun, though. Can't go wrong there either. David, what's going on with you this week?
Man, unfortunately, I won't be racing at Vegas. I won't be driving the O2 Chevrolet Camaro this weekend. Sponsorship drives our sports. I have a lot of great partners for our 2023 season, but don't have all my races sold. So the business side of it is, a sport that's been so good to me and good to everybody else. These race cars, these racing teams, they got to have funding. It's so expensive, and unfortunately, I won't be there racing, which I'm saddened about because, man, I love racing at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. I love racing every week, no matter where we're racing at. But I'll be cheering for the O2 Chevrolet Camaro. Don't know who's driving it yet. I just know I won't be. And but man, like week in and week out, we're going to see some great truck race, great Xfinity race, and and again, Sunday's Cup race is going to be exciting. So it's going to be a great weekend of racing there at Las Vegas.
Yeah, looking forward to that. And if you're looking to do sponsorship stuff with David, drop us a line or email inbox, davidstarpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll pass that along. That'll about do it for this edition of Let's Go Racing. We'll put the checkered flag out on this edition. And Dale, appreciate you joining us, man. Welcome back anytime. Dominic Aragon, David Starr, Tyler Jones. Make sure to subscribe to the show. New episodes out each and every week. Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube. Leave us a 5-star review or don't leave us one at all. Hit that like button as well. And follow us on social media at Star Podcast, Twitter and Facebook. Email davidstarpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.